Alright, check this out. I got my hands on some Swiss ebony, and before you're wondering, the climate change hasn't gone so fast that ebony is growing now in Switzerland, but it's like an artificial material, and it's made by a Switzerland company called Swiss Wood Solutions, and they also call it Sonowood, and it's thought as a substitute for ebony, and because ebony is quite an endangered species and it's getting rarer and rarer, and yeah, they're trying to make like a solution for this, and this is like European wood, and they basically it's maple, European maple, and they put it in a mineral solution, and then they compress it, and then it gets like gets a little bit darker. It's not like ebony, it's like maybe like torrefied maple, if you've seen it before. Also smells like torrefied maple. It's maybe they kind of roast it or something, and yeah, and as they state here, it has like has similar attributes than ebony. So the density, hardness, and speed of sound traveling through the material are like similar or even better than ebony. So on paper it's got like the same attributes than ebony or better, and yeah, it's quite interesting. So this is another piece, and you see they kind of it's not always working out that like the grain gets dark, so I don't know why that is, but yeah, maybe the solution doesn't soak into certain parts of the wood, or I don't know, and but it's like the same hardness, and yeah, it feels like the same, and it's actually quite like it's a Swiss perfection here. It's like super straight and super plain, and yeah, and it feels like super hard. It's like feels harder than ebony, and I'm gonna try out to make like a guitar with it, and make like a fretboard and everything out of it, except like the neck, because it's quite expensive, and actually you can't buy it yet, but you kind of have to ask the company, so they sell you it. So I paid quite a lot for it. It's more expensive than ebony a little bit, but I expect that it gets affordable in the future, and as I said, they are just in the developing phase, and I think it's like an interesting material for Canna guitars, because the hemp stone, it's like an alternative to glass and carbon fiber materials, and this is like an alternative to like the tropical woods, and yeah, to ebony, and I think it's gonna mostly be used for fretboards, because for fretboards you want like a very dense, very hard material, because you play on it all the time, and have the strings on it, and you don't want to have to wear it off. So, and maybe for bridge material it's a little bit too heavy. I don't know. I'm gonna make everything out of it, and we'll see. But I think it will be too heavy for bridge. But yeah. And now I'm gonna try to kind of work with it, like plane it and sand it and chisel it, and see how it's working out. Okay, let's try to use like the hand plane and see how it works with the Swiss ebony. Oh. Man, it's hard. So it works, but it's quite hard. Okay, now a close-up. So you can plane it, but it's quite tough. And yeah, but the cut looks good. Yeah, there you have it. Swiss ebony, hot stuff. So let's cut it with the bandsaw and see how this is going. Alright, so this stuff is really hard, and sawing into the grain, so makes it even harder. And I hopefully I don't destroy my blade with it, because if it's like, it's really hard stuff. So let's continue. So now try to cut it with a handsaw. Maybe that's gonna work a little bit better. I mean, it works, but it's like super hard. Of course, I'm cutting into the end grain, but it's still, I think it's much harder to cut than ebony. Okay, it will take me a year to go through this, but yeah, you kind of can cut it by hand, but I wouldn't. So let's try out the table saw. It will be quite a wasteful process, but I see no other chance to cut it than using the table saw. And yeah, let's see how this is going. Hopefully a little bit better than the bandsaw. So yeah, that's what the inside is looking. Looks quite light, maybe it's because of the cuts. We'll see after planing. But it's quite hard to cut, and I can imagine it's quite hard for the tools too. So yeah, that's it. Alright, so I'm gonna use my drum sander to sand this now. And it was quite hard to cut, and let's see how it sounds. does sound quite okay, but it still looks like it's quite light in the inside. So on the outside it looks quite dark, but on the inside it's much lighter. So a little bit disappointing there. But yeah, we'll see. Alright, so I started making this bridge out of Swiss ebony, and for now it worked quite well. Especially like routing it is quite easy, or let's say you normally when you route something and you kind of route outwards, and depending on the wood grain it tends to like chip off at the ends. And with ebony, it's more like it's like the wood fibers are glued together, so you don't ever get like these chip outs, and yeah, it's quite good for routing, and like routing on the inside, like to take some material off there. I'm gonna continue working with some hand tools, and yeah. But yeah, it's quite hard stuff, and drilling the holes here was quite hard, and the drill got quite hot, and yeah, I think it's not the best wood for the tools. I think they kind of wear off a little bit faster, but I can't tell now. So yeah, I'm gonna continue working with some hand tools, like some chisels and some rasps, and yeah. So first I'm gonna try to kind of chisel it a little bit, because maybe you can see like it's not chipping out. It's quite nice to cut, although it's quite hard. So when you go in there, you basically don't ever have the chance of like cutting against the grain and then the wood breaking. So that's quite nice. Chipped off a little bit, but much less than a normal wood. Right, now try some rasping. Yeah, it's quite hard to work with a rasp. And also like sanding it. It's quite a challenge. So I'm gonna continue working on this and try to make this bridge, and first I'm gonna use the belt sander to remove like the excess wood here much faster, and then continue with the hand tools. And it seems to be quite hard and hard to work with, but yeah, it doesn't chip off, and that's a good thing, right? So. Right, let's continue. Yeah, it's quite nice to work with the chisel, because it's not like, it's more like a homogeneous material, and you don't have to rely on the grain direction, and you can, yeah, work pretty nicely against the grain, and yeah, sanding it is quite hard. I mean, that's like 60 grit sandpaper, and you have to work really hard. It gets really hot when you kind of grit sand it. It's also on the belt sander or the drum sander. It's like super hot. Alright, so this was my first look at the Swiss ebony, Sonowood, and as you've seen, it's quite hard to work with, although it's supposed to be similar to ebony. It's got like this same density, hardness, and similar sound, but it's quite different, and kind of feels like it's like the wood fibers are kind of, when it gets compressed and they put it into like some mineral solution, and I think it kind of glues the fibers together. And sometimes that's really good thing when you kind of work with it, and kind of it doesn't chip off like when you chisel, and like with the router when you cut like that, and it doesn't chip off the wood as easily. So it's kind of nice to work with the router and with the chisel, and but it's like super hard and super hard to sand and to saw and all these things. But I've made like this bridge today, and it's yeah, turned out very well. I like the color very much, and it's like a lot more, it's kind of like an roasted maple from the looks of it, and like the nice thing about it, it's like it got no pores. Like when you want to finish it, you can sand it super high, and you don't need any pore filler. And this is like 2 coats of shellac, and as you can see, it's already super shiny and almost finished. And yeah, I haven't seen a wood like that. Like even with ebony, you have to do some pore filling, and it takes much longer than the Swiss ebony. So that's like the best thing about it. And yeah, but it's quite interesting. It's got its pros and cons, and I think it's very well for fretboards, because it's so super hard and super dense, and like the surface is super smooth. And I think also when you hammer in the frets, this will work very well, because it's not so fibrous. It's more like a homogeneous material, and that should be very helpful in holding the frets in place. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe end of the week I'm gonna do a fretboard, and yeah, I think for a fretboard and maybe for a bridge, it's kind of a nice material. And but keep in mind, it's like it's the stage right now, and I don't know. They probably changed something, and maybe it's gonna get darker and more like ebony. I think they call it Sonowood now, because they can't get it as dark as ebony. You could stain it probably, but yeah, it's got a nice look, and as I said, like roasted maple, and yeah, quite interesting material, and check it out. Sonowood, or also called Swiss ebony.